I got married the first time when I was 19. I'd been married probably about 5 years. The topic came up at work one day, and I just listened to these people talking about it, and I thought, oh my gosh, that word, homosexual, that word attaches to my life experience. It attaches to my attractions. It attaches to the struggles I've had. It attaches to why I feel so different than other people. So I had a conversation with a work friend that I knew was gay. And that conversation ended up in a situation where I had a sexual experience with him. And it was in that experience that the definite confirmation was there. So very quickly, I told my wife that I was gay and that I wanted a divorce. As I began to go through the dating scene at that time, this was 1979, 1980, I was discouraged. So as I began to talk about those relationships with a friend of mine at work, she was a born-again Christian. Eventually, I felt some sense of connection with what she was saying because I wanted to be free of the pain I was experiencing. So through that relationship, I became a born-again Christian. I began to hear the sermons and I began to understand that homosexuality was wrong, it was sinful, and that's probably why my life was not where I wanted it to be. And so I no longer contacted my gay friends. I broke off with the partner that I had at that time, and I just made an absolute clean break. There was no more connection, no more association with the gay culture, gay community, or gay people. But it got to the point where, again, I wanted a relationship. I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to live the rest of my life alone. So in my mind, I just thought, if I'm going to be with someone, it has to be a woman because being with a man is sin. So I have to figure this out. I've got to find out some way to make this work. So I met a girl that I started to develop a friendship with. And so we started dating. About 3 or 4 months into that dating relationship, I just experienced this incredible amount of anxiety. I just shut down, pulled away. I didn't want to be open with her. And it was because there was this conflict in me. It's like, this is not a match. And it was at that point when I heard a radio program. They offered an information sheet for ministries for gay people to get help. And so I thought, wow, there are ministries like this. And so I wrote a letter to 2 different ministries. I wrote one to Exodus International, one to Love and Action. But I got a phone call from the executive director's wife at that time. Her name was Anita. And Anita said they had an opening for a house manager in one of their live-in houses and wanted to know if I wanted to apply for the job. Within a few months, I just found that I had discovered nirvana. I mean, this was a perfect place. It was a community of people living together. I loved the community. I loved the people I was meeting. We had great fun in the house. We had great connections, and we were helping one another through something that we had a common struggle. After a couple of years, I decided to ask Valine to marry me. And that was, again, kind of an ex-gay ministry trophy scenario where people who were getting married to the opposite sex were successful. They were seen as people who'd crossed over to the side of life that was acceptable. So we got married, and within moments, meaning the wedding night, it was very clear to me that something really, really horrible had just happened. The advice I was given before I got married was, don't worry about the sexual element, it'll work itself out. That was the advice before I got married. And I'm thinking, anger comes up in me about that comment, because basically we as a culture set men and women up for this kind of mismatch, based on our theological foundation, based on our own deceptions. I have not spoken to a single man yet who's married to a woman that comes from a gay background that says, I am really connected to her. Not a single one. And so we set these people up for failure, and I was set up for failure. And then I became a leader, and I did the same thing, because I was too afraid of my own honesty. And that sounds like it sounds like I'm a wimp or something, and it's not really that. It's just that my experience with the Christian culture I was a part of is that it's very cultish. You have to believe a certain way. You cannot contradict certain theological ways of thinking, because you would then face condemnation. I started a transition of my thinking about homosexuality when I left Love in Action in 2008. But I couldn't even think about my own life. I couldn't even go there. And I had a leadership responsibility, which I took very seriously. Meaning I wasn't just receiving, but I had to hold on to what I was doing and believing, and I just could not allow myself to think about it. We lived in a belief system that I promoted and hung on to regarding the Bible, regarding faith, regarding my belief in God, in the culture I lived in. So what I was doing was helping people to live the narrow road of the Christian life in obedience. So I had lots of affirmation. I had lots of internal belief system that what I was doing was the best for everyone involved because of what I believed about God and homosexuality and the Bible and all of those things. So I continued to press into that. When I left Love in Action, the day I walked out the door in 2008, I left something that was the most conflictive and painful time in my life to date. It was 2 years of absolute torture being in that ministry for all the reasons one can imagine, because of the protest in 2005, because of all the challenges from outside authorities. But the most difficult thing was the internal staff conflict. The internal nature of the staff relationships became so conflicted that every day I would go to work, I would just go get in my office and close the door. My point today is that I don't know who God is. I don't know what God is. I don't know where I've come from, and I don't know where I'm going. And so it isn't that I don't believe, but it's that I have no certainty that there's any one belief. And so today, I believe in grace, absolutely. I believe that there is a universe, whether it's the Creator or God, whatever we want to ascribe it to. I believe there is a creation that will support us unconditionally as we pursue this journey called life. As a gay man, I believe I should have never been subjected to ex-gay therapy because it denies the very existence of something in me that is not wrong. So the ex-gay movement over those 40 years, which is now on its dying breath, thankfully, but through those 40 years created a dialogue that was necessary, like the AIDS crisis created a dialogue that was necessary. And so the ex-gay movement moved the church to a place where now they're saying, we welcome all. And now we're sitting in a place and being able to evaluate those years and say, there were some things we had right, but we had a whole lot of things that were wrong, and we need to change that. My amends will continue probably the rest of my life. I don't think I'll ever be done because there's still more people that need to hear that I hear them. They need to hear that I understand. They need to hear that I know I was wrong.